Thank you everyone for being here today. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. While love is what we all desire, sex is all over our media. We see it on TV, billboards, movies, and music. Today, the world believes it is acceptable to live with and sleep together before marriage, and it's even more acceptable in Christian circles as well. According to the U.S. Attorney's Legal Service, a census shows that 9.7 million Americans are living with an unmarried different-sex partner. But the problem is not just sex, but lust. Lust is what is being pushed into our minds. Sex can be and is a good thing. It's from God. I have a minor in biblical studies and have also experienced both situations of people moving in together and then failing because it's not God's plan. But most importantly, I have seen blessings that couples experience by waiting until marriage. Premarital sex and cohabitation stems from a lack of obedience and self-discipline to God, a lack of patience, and a lack of boundaries in the relationships, and can cause many issues like higher rates of divorce, a desensitization to sin, and a lack of self-control while married. While I validate this statement by discussing how premarital sex or cohabitation has become a common problem that leads to issues like higher rates of divorce, a desensitization to sin, and lack of self-control in the marriage. And it can be resolved by obedience or self-discipline, patience, and setting boundaries. This leads me to my first point. Saving sex and cohabitation for marriage is God's plan. It is meant to protect us, not keep us from His blessings. Disobedience to God's plan can lead to divorce and a desensitization of sin. Marriage has a more of a fighting chance when you wait to live and sleep together. According to a U.S. Census, in terms of both divorce and marital happiness, marriages that were preceded by cohabitation are less successful by those that were not. The probability of premarital or cohabitation breaking up within 5 years is up to 49%. A common saying is that you must test drive the car before you take it off the lot. But if we use that, we can actually reverse it and say if you never go onto the lot or never test drive a car before marriage, you won't know the difference between a good car or a bad car or be able to compare. David actually is a good example of being desensitized to sin in the Bible. When he became king, God told him to not take too many horses, to only have one wife, and not take too much gold or silver. But he listened to 1 and 3, but not 2. He had many wives, and because of this, it desensitized him to the sins of the world, and therefore led to his affair with Bathsheba, and ultimately ruining God's plan for David's life. This brings me to my second point. Saving sex for cohabitation for marriage is an act of obedience to God and creates a stronger bond and a sense of control and self-control within the marriage. It strengthens the relationship with the spouses. For example, if you do not live together before marriage, it strengthens your self-control before you're even married. While married, you're going to want to give up, give in, and walk away because marriage is hard. But if you don't move in together, you fight for your marriage before you were even married. According to R. Kent Hughes, author of Disciplines of a Godly Man, the heat of our culture oppresses us with its obsessions and pornotopias. In order to not become part of those statistics, there has to be a disciplined sweat. This leads me to my final points and solutions to this issue. The solution to help end the issue of sex and cohabitation before marriage is making people aware of God's plan and deep love for us. And by being self-disciplined or obedient, patient, and setting boundaries are those ways. Self-discipline is the first way. Job shows us his self-discipline and self-control when he says, I have made a covenant with my eyes to not look lustfully with a girl. Job 31:1. Job understood that God was sovereign and God loved him deeply. Patience is the next one. God tells us to be patient and have courage. In Psalm 27:14 it says, wait for the Lord and be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. God will provide. C, or the last one, is set boundaries and guard your relationships. Proverbs 4:23 states, keep your heart with all vigilance, and from it flows the springs of life. This brings me to my conclusion. From the facts and statements that we have seen, and including Christians, they believe it's acceptable to live together before marriage and even sleep together before marriage. While this can seem to be innocent, it can lead to harmful consequences like higher divorce rates, desensitized to the sins of the world, and even a lack of self-control within the marriage. I beg you and I pray that you will stand up for biblical and God-honoring relationships within marriages. Thank you so much for listening.